give them something to talk about. I see the energy running out. I got a planet to run around. Okay. You ain't do nothing but run your mouth.
We're right on time for the 10:15 time I scheduled on the YouTube. I was doing it this morning. I raced home. I coached early this morning and then raced home afterwards, and I had basically an hour and a half to take the dogs for a walk, which turned into a run because I was like, oh shit, I gotta run because
Run out of time.
I'm gonna run out of time to make it back for the podcast. Quick shower, and then I would go, oh, I forgot to make the graphic, so I scrambled and made that graphic.
So that's where the 15 minutes came from.
And that's where the
10:15.
Because I was like, as I'm scheduling,
I said that in the front, right? Like,
I go to schedule it, and as I'm scheduling, I'm like, 10 o'clock, you're stoned. There's no way you can. There's no way you're gonna be.
You're not making it.
Hey, I got internet issues. Mine's spinning. Are you guys okay?
Yeah, we're good.
Yeah, I forgot to plug into the main internet, which I'll do in a moment. But welcome, Lisa Himmel.
Thank you.
Diablo member, and I've gotten to know Lisa really well over the last, I don't know, I say 4 months, 3-4 months.
It's been, I think, almost 9. I moved here in January,
Right.
and came here the day after I moved. So.
Yeah, but I have a hands-off approach with new members for about the first 4 months. I keep people, my wife and the front desk people keep me away from the new members for a while.
Yeah, it's like the first person comes in. Who are you?
Yeah, and then slowly introduce them. Then I make slow kind of introduction, just so I don't scare them off.
It's by design.
Well, I remember I introduced myself to you and Yvonne, I think that first week. It's like, I'm Lisa, I'm new, and I've heard all about the gym, and I was very excited.
Yeah.
Maybe too eager.
No, that's good. I love it when people tell me they've heard of the gym. It's like you want to feed an affiliate owner's ego, by the way. Anyone out there, if you're joining a CrossFit gym, this is a labor of love. Like we've grinded and spent all our money and all of our time and invested our family and friends into this, got everybody on board, told them all about it, how great we are, we're owning this gym. And then it's kind of lonely for the first 6 months to a few years, actually, when you realize nobody knows who you are.
Or they're tired of hearing about CrossFit.
Or they're tired of hearing about it from you. If you go into an affiliate owner, go, yeah, I've heard a lot about this gym. That will just you'll put them on in
Cloud 9.
Oh, Cloud 9 for that. They absolutely love it because it's a small business. They're super proud of it. There's nothing thrills me more. I tell you, one of the best moments I've had in being a gym owner in terms of recognition, when I went to the games, and I remember, I'll never forget it. It was in Madison, and it was the first year it was in Madison, and I was going from, they have a big open area where it's like kind of the festival area. Then you go from the festival area into the Coliseum to go into the games to watch the athletes go. And as I'm going up the stairs into the Coliseum, someone's coming the other way with a Diablo t-shirt on in Madison, Wisconsin. Someone that was not a Diablo member that I did not know. I had no idea who it was. And I was, oh, hey, it's my shirt.
Dude, I had the exact same thing happen a few weeks ago. We were in Vegas. We were getting on a plane, and this dude's walking with a Diablo sweatshirt. I was like, Diablo! He looks up. He was like, hey. So really? I did not recognize the guy at all.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah,
it's a small world.
It is. It's only getting smaller too.
I love it. But anyway,
Sure.
so thank you for when you did come in and tell us that you heard about our gym. That was awesome. And you did come to us 9 months ago, but you and I have had more conversations like in recent months, in-depth conversations sitting up in the front room. And Lisa revealed to me her eating disorder that she's had for many years. And as we talked about it, I was uncomfortable at first talking about it. And Lisa said, no, you can ask me any questions you want to ask. You can talk about it. I like it. And then she revealed, that she's currently in a structured program with Kaiser. Told me about the program, which made me cringe a little. And you'll learn, and you'll know why it makes Lisa cringe too when you hear about it and the process. It's an amazing program, but it is their thought process with respect to the food types, and I don't want to go too much into it, are different than what we would maybe normally advise. But anyway, so it was really fascinating for me to hear the story from her perspective. So Lisa, and that's what we're going to do. And then she says, I'll talk about it with anyone, which I thought, really? And she does. She's willing to talk about it with anybody. And and which will certainly help other folks as well. So Lisa, thanks for joining us. Sorry,
Well,
that was kind of a long-winded introduction.
No, it's great. Thank you. And again, thank you for this opportunity. I think a little while ago when I heard that members were on the podcast, I thought like, gosh, this could be a really good forum for me to share. 'Cause I've always been very open, but then there was like the line of being open and then actually kind of doing something about it, like knowing, okay, I really need help. I really need to change. But the difference was, I think this time I was actually like going through a change, which I'm no longer in like I'm in an outpatient program now. But this was like back in May when I told you I was starting with the intensive outpatient program with Kaiser.
Yeah.
And like, I want to encourage you to keep coming, which, like don't tell anybody, but they really discourage exercise during it. And it's like, I really feel like there's a way that I can keep coming and be making progress. And that's like what I've been able to do. But if it's okay, I kind of wanted to give like a little bit of a history of
Yes.
disorder.
Hang on one second though. Can you do me a favor and unscrew the thing and raise the mic up? There's a little screw thing. Loosen that up and then raise the mic up a little bit. I want to bring it a little closer. There you go. That should be enough. I'll lift it up. Yeah, lift it up a little more.
Okay.
Right there. Now tighten it up.
All right.
Yeah, right there.
Is that better?
Oh, that's way better.
That's way better.
Now I can turn the volume down just a touch.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, please share.
So to give some perspective, I'm 39 now. I'm almost 40, and I developed my eating disorder, I think probably around 18, like maybe if not really my whole life, I've had some kind of disordered eating. Was overweight in middle school, which is like a really terrible time to be overweight. Kids are mean. Developed early, and then in high school, so I grew up in Palo Alto, and which is a very competitive area. Like academically, I was fine, but not excelling. And it was more towards my like sophomore year, I started going to the gym, and it was on my own. And at that time, there weren't really luxury gyms. Like the YMCA was the place to go, and that was around the corner from my house. So I went on my own and started to take more control of my diet, I guess you could say. And kind of unintentionally just started to lose weight, was getting praise, like, oh, this feels really good, which is oftentimes how it starts.
Kind of fueled it.
Yeah, exactly. Because I was like, oh, if I look good now, like what will I look like going further? So in my senior year, by my senior year of high school, I'd been continuously cutting things out and exercising more. And at what point had asked a trainer at the gyms, like, okay, well, I want to lose like 10 pounds. What do I do? I didn't realize he was an ex-wrestler, which was kind of my mistake. And he went on a little bit of a diatribe, like don't eat carbs after 6 and all of these, nutritional myths, which I latched onto because I didn't really know any better. I was also fueling myself with information from like Shape magazine, Fitness magazine.
Yeah.
So it got to a point where I just was like continuously cutting things out, losing more weight. And at a certain point had like crossed over a line that I couldn't really bring myself back from. Fell into a pretty bad depression because I wasn't sleeping, obviously wasn't fueling myself very well. I started seeing a dietitian and a therapist and got to a bit of a point where I was like stabilized enough to go to college that year. Because this, again, like my senior year of high school, I think like barely graduated because I was just so exhausted. One thing with really long restriction is it ended up leading to binging behavior. And, I'd have like 2 weeks and then all of a sudden like a day-long binge. And at that time, my way of kind of purging behavior was to exercise obsessively and go back to that. I got myself stable enough to go to college. I went to UC Santa Cruz, but that was, I think that fueled the eating disorder even further, which delved into like full-on bulimia. And I mean, this is like a very fast track version too.
No, it's fine. We got lots of questions when.
And
but keep going.
Yeah.
And I also wanted to start this too as like, you know, if there's trigger warning for anybody as well, like, because I'm going to be very open and I think it's really important. So if at any point, you know, but my goal is not to trigger anybody, but to really educate. So freshman year of college, you know, I'm kind of on my own. There's the dining hall, free for all you can eat. And it just exacerbated the bulimic behaviors. And I got to a point where I was binging and purging upwards of 10 times a day.
Oh, wow.
Was really, really malnourished, very sick, and was recommended by the end of the year that I go to a treatment program. I was almost going to go, and then I just really didn't like the director. So whether that was a good idea or not at the time, you know, maybe it could have saved me, but didn't end up going. Stabilize myself enough to go to like continue going to school. And you know, met somebody. I had a boyfriend, and I think I would classify it as like I was functioning. I was never like totally eating disorder free, but going to class, behaviors had stabilized a bit where I could get a job and be in a relationship. And meanwhile, during that relationship, I had gained a pretty significant amount of weight and was realizing like, you know, while I really love being in this relationship and love that I'm working, I'm just really uncomfortable. So innocently started to exercise again and made a pact with myself too, to really like make sure I was not engaging in any kind of binging, purging behavior. Because that hadn't really ceased. I'd go through months without it and then go back to it. So fast track to my senior year of college, which, you know, mirroring senior year of high school, I was falling back into the same restrictive behaviors, like going to the gym, cutting certain foods out, going to the gym more, cutting certain foods out, and was losing weight really rapidly. And to the point where people were like, okay, you know, at first it was like, oh, wow, you're looking really good. And then it's, okay, something's going on. And what triggered, like I would say, a severe relapse was my boyfriend and I were living in an apartment, found out we had to move. We moved. Transitions have always been very triggering for me. And all of a sudden it was like, I just declined and had a pretty significant breakdown, wasn't sleeping, was really underweight. And by the time I like reached out for help, it was just like my brain wasn't there. So that summer I ended up going to a treatment program in Arizona, which in the summer, it's 115 degrees every day. Really difficult to feel mindful when you're like, I'm overheating. We have limited time we can be outside. And I was in like a really like just angry, rebellious phase. Had not been sleeping, obviously undernourished. I ended up leaving after 10 days and came back and was hospitalized at Stanford. At first, I admitted myself.
How old?
So I was 22 at this time. This was
Okay.
2007. And, you know, it's like, I know that I'm really depressed. I feel like I'm not eating. I'm not sleeping. I don't really know what to do. And it was like, well, you know, when you need help, you go to the hospital. And when you go in and you say like, I'm very depressed, like it's essentially, somebody has to watch you. And that's it was the psychiatric unit. When I first went in, I ended up going home that night. I was like, no, I think I'll be okay. And then like 2 days later, I will never forget this. I like woke up in the morning and felt terrible. It's like, I don't want to, like, I just don't want to live anymore. And luckily my boyfriend came home at that point and found me and was like, okay, we're going back. So I ended up admitted to the Stanford Psychiatric Hospital. At that time, they didn't really have an appropriate adult program for eating disorders. So I was just on the psych unit. Ended up very, very over-medicated, not really treating the eating disorder. And after 2 months, pretty much came out worse than I went in, which is always a touchy subject too, because it was, you know, like I remembered even like saying to doctors, like, something's like, I'm way over medicated. I'm totally dissociated. And anything you say is like against, you know,
what kind of medications were they?
So there were, first it was antidepressants, which is very common, and anti-anxieties. The issue is when you're undernourished, it's very difficult to know what's working
Yeah.
because you have to get to a stable point of nourishment
Baseline.
and sleeping, baseline, to then see, okay, is this environmental or what can we actually address?
Mhm.
And the dosage kept getting increased. And then it went to an antipsychotic because I was very, like, I guess you could say paranoid, but also just so malnourished and hadn't been sleeping. So of course I was going to, exhibit signs of paranoia and like, oh, okay, well, we're recommending this antipsychotic. And at that time, I think I ended up on the highest dosage that they had.
Oh,
Wow.
And I was, like 90,
How much were you weighing?
Yeah.
weighing?
93 pounds.
Yeah.
So it was like, I was completely dissociated. I would call it like, I felt like a cardboard cutout where nothing around me seemed real. I could see people. I knew I was there, but I had no connection with my body. And, then the doctors would come in and like, how are you doing? It's like, well, like a little worried or like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, well, we need to increase the dose. So it was just like, it was a very traumatic, terrible experience. Didn't cure the eating disorder at all. But I got to a point where they discharged me and went to a like aftercare facility, which also didn't deal with the eating disorders. And at that point ended up going back to just like binge eating because I didn't know what else to do.
Yeah.
When you say binge eating, what does that mean? Binge eating, is it once every other day, once on the on Sundays, and
Yeah,
I mean, how does it differ from your regular diet in terms of food quality and food quantity?
Volume, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think they'll classify it as like an excessive amount of food in a short amount of time. So it can really
Yeah.
be anything. But there's a disconnect that your mind and body are not connected in that moment. And it would start out with like, I would have breakfast and then, okay, I'm going to have this. And then it would, like spiral into something further. And all of a sudden, I'd eaten, it's an excessive amount of calories in a certain amount of time.
Was it hunger driven? I mean, in other words, you would
point-
eat and then all of a sudden,
Yeah.
oh man, I'm still
Or like
starving.
more like a
No, I mean,
dopamine
it's a
trigger.
dopamine,
Yeah,
it's
okay.
depression. It's like, just at that point, I think I was still so dissociated that I didn't really know what else to do. Like all I know how to do right now is eat.
Okay.
But and which I'll get into in more recent times. Like then there was really like I had no connection to my mind and body. Like it wasn't necessarily intentional. It's like I'm just gonna eat. And unfortunately, like throughout the years, like since that point, that's been the one thing that I would say bulimia has been the one thing that's like really hard to completely get rid of. I would go through phases of like stability, getting better, months without any behaviors, and then something would trigger and go back to either just purging to get rid of food or binging. And like I'm trying to like, okay, so where are we now?
I was going to ask, like, how? So from when your boyfriend admitted you back into Stanford and you went through onto all the meds, how long was that process from that to by the time you got out and then went to like an outpatient program?
So I was 2 months at Stanford. I was in an outpatient for 3 months. Moved back in with my parents.
Okay.
And then I had a few years of kind of, I would say, the rebellious phase of I ended up moving to Florida and because my boyfriend at the time broke up with me that like, which we were so young, which I could understand.
Yeah.
Like I can't deal with this any longer. And like, I get that. So that whole period is maybe 6 months and then the few years of almost rebellion and then moved back. I think it was like 2005, 2006, moved back in with my parents. And I had to finish my degree too. Cause before I went into hospital and went to the program, I had like 2 more classes to finish. So ended up, leaving and I thought, okay, I'll be back in a few months, and it took a couple years, but I did finish. And then I would say like was back into for many years of a like functioning
Mhm.
where things would be fine for a little bit,
Stable.
stable.
Yeah.
It was exercising, sometimes maybe more obsessive, other times more stable. My weight would go up and down. And one thing that I think like really triggered behaviors was drinking.
Mm.
It's like offset eating for most of the day, drink, like, okay, well, I need something to get like to soak this up. And then it
Yeah.
was like, oh, now I need to get rid of it.
Because maybe you ate like too much as far as like the
Well,
binging,
right.
and then it
Yeah.
just created
Or
a
just,
cycle.
oh, well, like, you know, when you drink, like you should have fried. Like there's all these
The myths, yeah.
the myths,
Yeah.
misconceptions. But I don't want to kind of like,
Mhm.
I don't need to muddle over too many details. Like, let me know too if I'm rambling.
No, it's good.
But so I would say kind of more into my 30s, I had more periods of stability. And then it was really the pandemic is
Mm.
what triggered, would say, restrictive behaviors again. And at that time, making an excuse for it. I stopped drinking a little over 4 years ago. It was like leading, I would say 2019, December was my last time I had a drink. And it started out as a month. And then I was like, you know what, I feel really good. And then the pandemic happened and we're all home. It's like, okay, well, I have choices. I can either do what everybody's doing and like, you know, COVID cocktails, or I could really stay to my convictions. And that's the route I took. Meanwhile, had been in this pattern of intermittent fasting, which
Mhm.
was all the rage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it started out, I think, like innocently. To be honest, I've never really been a breakfast person. I just like go about the morning and then would eat later. But that window kept getting pushed back and pushed
Mm.
back. And then more foods were starting to get limited. And you know, what was, I think, misleading to people is I was getting really in shape. Like I was exercising a lot.
So you're getting the praise again.
Getting the praise again, like,
Yeah.
oh my God, you're so ripped. And I, you know, had abs, and it was like, you must be doing something. In the back of my mind, it's like, this takes so much sacrifice. People don't realize like I am, and looking back on it, it's like, it was really restrictive then, but was making excuses. And I would say like every year was getting a little more restrictive and a little more towards like kind of falling back into what would be classified as eating disorder behavior. Last year, things really went downhill, and I'd like gotten to this point of my window of eating was so small and so
Mhm.
limited that I like refused to break it too. It was like I felt like something bad would happen if I ate before. I mean, there's points where I wouldn't eat anything until like 8 o'clock at night.
Oh, wow.
But if somebody said anything, I would get really defensive. Like I'm okay because I make sure that I do eat.
But then again, you're now going back to that binging stage where you're trying to get all your calories in during that window.
But I wasn't even then. It was like literally, if I look
Oh,
back on it, it was like, no, it wasn't enough. So that's
Got
why I
it.
was like losing weight so
Got
fast
it.
and my energy was dipping, but I couldn't stop. And then something triggered the binging again. I think I just got really hungry and I
Mhm.
couldn't stop. And at first, I wasn't going back to the purging behaviors. And then I think there was like one day, it was like, I just like snapped and I couldn't stop myself from it. So that was like last summer, and this would happen like once or twice a week, every 2 weeks maybe, and then would feel terrible, had no energy. Meanwhile, I was still exercising. I
Mhm.
mean, there would be days where this would happen during the day. And because I should know I was working from home at the time too, and then would go to the gym, which is like really dangerous too.
Yeah.
And people were starting to notice too, like something's happened with her. Like not just the weight loss, but the energy dip. So when I joined here, I was the lowest weight I had been in a really long time. And that like wasn't even the lowest that I ended up getting to. And like for the first few weeks, I was more stable. I was like, okay, we can't keep engaging in this behavior. And then it was really like over, to be honest, during the open, it started again. And I don't know how I made it through the open. Was really underweight, not fueling. Remember, we would be standing around Friday night lights and like everybody's eating, and I like couldn't get myself to do it. And Craig, it was like a few months after that, I was warming up for a class and you came up to me like, hey, are you eating enough? Because you're really lean. And I remember I just looked at you and was like, no, I'm not. And it was almost like I had permission at that point to just say like, no, I'm not okay. Like I know that I'm not okay. I need help. I'm getting help. And this is a safe place now to say that. Because to be honest too, so when I then finally got into this program, which we can talk about getting help and how all that works later, but it was really difficult to get everything finalized to prove that you're sick enough. I had a clinician even say to me, she's like, well, your BMI is not like that underweight. But sorry, I lost my train of thought.
No.
So they denied you care, like just
not at it. Just like you have to go through all these steps, like prove that you're sick enough, and then getting insurance to cover it. But I guess what I found out later was like because I've always had a pretty low resting heart rate, which is difficult too, like with clinicians because they're going to see that and like, oh, you need to be hospitalized. Like, no, but I'm also really athletic. But it was at a point of when I had an EKG, like, are you okay to go home?
Wow.
So it was, I think, like barely at 40, and generally I'm around 45. Which is, I guess, technically too low. But again, being athletic, like that's kind of a difficult line to cross. But between that and, they were concerned that I like could go into cardiac arrest is like the main concern. So I think was at the border of being accepted into an outpatient program, not just with my weight, but with all the vital signs. So really that program in a sense was a saving grace. And, I'm at like, it took me a really long time even getting into it to accept anything and to even start gaining weight. Like I don't think I gained anything for a month. And then once I started to, it's still not at the pace that they would like to see. But I am noticing a difference and haven't had behaviors as far as binge and purge, and like that's something that every day I work on. It's always, I wouldn't say like that's been the biggest battle. The biggest battle has been with how I see myself now. Of okay, I want to stop. Like I feel okay. Like even seeing my reflection, like, oh my gosh, my cheeks, because before I was so like sunken in. And I think what made it difficult to really change too is like, even then I would still get kind of almost like positive comments like, oh, you must be a triathlete because like you're lean and strong and fast. And like, no, I'm really sick. Like, so, I mean, again, Craig, like I was so relieved when you said something, and that also triggered in my mind, like, this is going to be a great forum to be able to talk about it. And I want to be open about it because I know I'm going to start gaining weight, and I know I'm going to keep coming here. And my fear was people would say like, oh, wow, you've gained weight, but you're getting strong.
Yeah. One of the luxuries that affiliate owners have and head coaches like Jamie have is that we see our members not every day. We see them maybe once or twice a week because I come at different times of the day. I try to, get some exposure to the PM folks, get some exposure to the middle of the day folks, and then get some occasionally get my ass out of bed like this morning.
Got your dose this morning
and get some exposure to the early AM people. But what makes that valuable, that limited exposure, is that we notice physical changes in our members, because when you see someone every day, it's hard to really see the change.
Right.
But for like Jamie and I, when we see people once a week, or sometimes for me, it's once every 2 weeks, I'll see someone, and either when I'm out front having coffee and they walk by, I'm like, holy crap, who's it we saw the other day was Paige, which is Coach Harold's girlfriend, and I haven't seen her in a few weeks, and she came walking in and she was dressed for class. I'm like, man, she's like, wow, she's kind of getting jacked. She looks great. She's walking differently. Like, holy smokes.
I think that's the thing you notice the most is the stride.
Yeah, that is one of the
posture.
Things you notice about posture and stride. And then it was the same with you. And I had commented to Kim, I think, and I said, Kim, is Lisa getting leaner? And she said, yeah, I think so. And that was when, and people ordinarily, they won't say things. Me, I'm 61 and I just
Craig's got no filter.
Got no filter. And I honestly, every person that comes through that door, I care about them. Yeah. And it's just something, and you should know that about affiliate owners in general. It is something that, and our coaches, is we care. And at 61, I've heard almost everything. But the reason why you're on the podcast is because I haven't heard this. And it was just the, I've heard of eating disorders. I've known folks with eating disorders, but I've really not understood what it meant until you and I started having in-depth conversations. You gave me permission at, no, you can ask me anything. I'm like, okay, here goes.
Yeah.
And, but it was, I felt like it was time to let you know that that others here, coaches, were noticing the difference, and that perhaps maybe you might not be aware that it's that visible. And so it was almost, just kind of like a hey, just want to know where you at, because you are jacked and you are fast. Sorry. and you have a great engine. And if there's, look, if there's any running in it that's, combined more than 800 meters, chances are Lisa's going to be at the top of the leaderboard. And she's strong too. But yeah, that was obvious. Let me ask you this. So going back, because this, 20 years that you've been, which is really remarkable to me. How much were your parents involved in the process of healing? And, I imagine as a parent myself, like, it's be really freaking scary for the parents.
Yeah. And so one of the, I guess, ironies in all of it was my mom was a food critic.
Oh,
she's a journalist, and I mean, both my parents are retired, but up until I was like, I think she retired when I was 22, 23. So she worked for the Mercury News and got into their restaurant reviewing, I think, when I was 10. So for a while, it was like the dream that, I got to go out to eat at the best restaurants, and I loved it. And then that was something which she's like, as I was declining more and more, and like declining offers to go and declining health-wise too, like, what do I do here? Like, I'm getting paid to eat while my daughter's starving herself. And my mom has always also been athletic. Like, she played tennis growing up, and she's always like, she's the one who got me into running. And so been very, people would think food critic, and they'd always comment to her, like, well, how do you stay so skinny? So, but to answer your question, my parents have been very involved. I mean, even to this day, like, they'll come to therapy with me, and I talk to them frequently. Like, if I'm having a hard time, or if my dad will really help me with, more challenge foods. Like, okay, I'm going to try this today. And it's almost like being a kid again, but they've really tried to understand. I do come from a foodie family, which is really difficult sometimes too. And also, I grew up in a Jewish family, and food is always involved, with everything. There is an expression. It's like, they tried to kill us, we survived, let's eat. So,
wow.
I have to compartmentalize a lot too when I'm with family, but, for parents, there's treatment programs that are specifically revolving around the family dynamic and how the parents can be involved.
How long did you hide it from them?
I don't know how much I really hid necessarily, but there were months of just not saying anything. And honestly, really this past couple years, it was a lot easier to like brush it off as like, no, don't worry. I do eat. I'm just eating in these windows of time. And my mom was like, I wish we had said something sooner. Because she's like, we knew something was wrong, but
Parents.
yeah, they're parents. And I've told them now too, is like, because they're part of what they call like the relapse prevention programs. Like these are things to say to me, or if like you notice I start slipping, please be honest. Or if you notice I'm being weird around food or like eating things, you're like, this looks like more restrictive behavior, say something. What is kind of off limits to say about like bodies, or if they comment on, or if somebody else in my family comments on their own weight, like how do we kind of flip the tables there? But yeah, I think I'm very lucky in the sense that my family has been really involved and
I can't imagine if they
supportive.
weren't. Like it would like where that goes.
Well, and I knew people, especially in treatment, who like have a terrible relationship with their parents or with one parent, or one parent would be the one that like also has an eating disorder. And it's like, so I'm doing treatment on my own. It's like, oh, wow, I'm really lucky to have the support that I do.
How much of the depression, maybe psychosis, if that was there, is related to nutrient deficiency versus say, just part of you?
So at this point, I'm not on any kind of medication. Like I ended up seeing a psychiatrist who's like, this is environmental. She doesn't really need it. Depression and eating disorders go hand in hand. So when I'm not feeling myself well, then yes, I'm going to feel more depressed. But now, I mean, and that is something that's been remarkably different. It was like, oh, I'm thinking again. I mean, I was really for months, like did not have good cognitive ability. And
that's got to be, but the cognitive ability's got, your brain is just a glucose fiend.
Right.
And so a nutrient deficiency, like you don't think clearly.
Not at all. I mean,
well, that's what you said in the beginning was like once you were first admitted, the drugs that they were putting you on kind of dulled and created that separation between brain and body. So,
and I like during this most recent treatment program, realizing like, oh, I'm putting sentences together more clearly again. Like I can stay focused better. I like being able to read a book again was like remarkable. And I read every day now. And also with the anxiety, like that was a huge trigger. And I think what was so interesting too is the energy distribution, that I actually get more tired now than I did when I was really underweight. And that is a lot of it is because your body's not in this flight response all the time. And before, it was also fueled by so much coffee, where now I try and cut it off at a certain point. And it's this, you're on a dopamine rush and flight response all the time. So it's like, I couldn't stop moving. And now like at 5:30 PM, I'll need to take a nap sometimes. Cause it's like, I guess extreme exhaustion is part of the recovery process. Your body's going through so much trying to repair. It's like, well, why did I have energy when I was restricting? It's like, it's not real energy. It's
like
just
adrenaline
like,
and anything.
oh my gosh.
It's survival almost.
Yeah. You're in a constant flight response. And I mean, I would leave here and take the dog for a walk and walk for hours and just like, I couldn't stop moving.
Which that's a glycogen burner too.
Well, all of it. Yeah.
I mean, you're just taking energy away. It's like, wow. Holy smokes.
Yeah. So now it's like, I feel like I have, which is, it's still a challenge, but it's like, I've finally given myself permission to rest.
Right.
Not always great at it, but definitely better than I was before. And it's like, if my body's saying like, okay, you need to lay down, then I lay down.
That's good.
Tell me about the bulimia, because that's fascinating to me as well. And I try hard to understand, I've known about it, vicariously through, news or anything else. I never have known anyone that has had it. Was that is that guilt motivated? Like you eat or you binge and then you're like, oh shit, I can't have those calories in my body, so I need to force myself to puke. I mean, is that what it is?
I think it's different for everybody too, and in different phases of my life would come in certain ways. But this past kind of relapse into it was literally fueled by hunger. I had been restricting for so long, and like I would say the intermittent fasting window, because if I'm not eating until like at least 6 p.m. or something, it was certain days like I have to have something. It's like 2 o'clock, and I just remember that specifically, that it would start out with like, okay, well you can have like a banana. And then that banana would turn, it's like, well, what if I had something else? And then it was like this, well, shit, I've already gone this far. I might as well just keep
interesting.
going.
Yeah.
And
That
yeah.
is a behavior that's typical of most humans. We do that.
Right.
Screw it.
But then it's like and then the guilt,
Yeah.
like, oh my God, what have you done? And
Interesting.
what's really challenging with purging is that there is a dopamine rush to it.
Mhm.
And then afterwards, it's this come down, this huge depression, the energy dip,
Oof.
the like,
Shouldn't have done
just
that kind of thought process.
all of it. You see like sallow eyes, just feeling, and that, is interesting because it often wouldn't stop with just one. It's like, well, I've already gone this far. Cause then you feel like, for lack of a better word, you just feel so shitty. It's like, well, might as well just keep going. And then by the end of the day, it's like my day is shot. To be honest, if I didn't come here, the only reason was because I'd had like a binge purge episode that day. It was like, I don't have any energy to go. I wasn't sick. I mean, I was sick,
Right.
but
I
like,
got you.
It's almost like it's like a form of an addiction.
oh, it
too.
completely is.
Yeah.
And that's what's so difficult to stop. And then there's like certain foods that it becomes like, well, I can only have these if there's going to be a behavior associated with
Yeah.
it. Cause I don't, or like certain foods that would trigger a binge, or this one is one of my binge purge foods. And so I'm like continuously working to introduce those back in.
What were those foods consist of? Like what kind of?
I mean, like ice cream,
Okay.
potato chips, pizza, things. It was like anything.
Yeah.
Dessert. I would eat like cereal, and then
There
for a
goes the
while it
box.
was.
Yeah.
I used to live around the corner from a donut shop, so it was just, yeah.
Which
like,
kind of the foods you don't necessarily know you don't want to be eating, but
right.
that would probably maybe help trigger some of
Yes.
the purge.
How long have you been CrossFitting?
7 years or
Okay.
so.
All right. So
Yeah.
so you're and Lisa comes, and before she was at Diablo, she was at NC Fit, NorCal CrossFit, Jason Kalipa's gym, a very well-run organization with great coaches. And so I know, I mean, I'm sure you already knew beforehand, especially if you're always into fitness, but you knew what healthy nutrition looked like
Oh yeah.
and was supposed to be. So I can't there's times that, there's, donuts or cookies, I'll eat those things. And I have to give same kind of guilt. And so then I'll kind of, avoid anything else for a while, right. To kind of offset that and not to minimize certainly, but man, that must've been hard. Like eating larger quantities of those foods, then you probably had to feel crappy just like physically eating those, because those things don't make you feel good. If you're not eating that way, if you're eating healthy and all of a sudden you eat 4 or 5 donuts, you're not, or a bowl of cereal, I know you're not gonna feel good.
Well, the difference too is like, because you're really disconnected in that moment. So there's
Yeah.
not even a
Physical feel.
a time to understand what you're doing. And that's what triggers the like, oh shit, I need to get rid of this.
Oh,
Yeah.
But like now, as I'm still learning to reconnect with like what being full feels like, or more consistent nutrition, is when I can understand certain things that like, oh, this didn't make me feel that great. Or like actually have that hunger fullness cue. I mean, a binge purge is like you just have no idea. And because then all of a sudden, like, oh, it's like you snap out of it.
Yeah.
And then feel really terrible. But I was also at like that point too, like just losing weight really rapidly, where one misconception is like that there's an image with eating disorders, where a lot of people who do suffer from bulimia are not underweight. They're often overweight. So it goes, or they might look normal. Or there are a lot of athletes who suffer from it, runners especially, gymnasts. That, I mean, eating disorders are very prominent in athletics. It's just people being honest about it.
Yeah.
But again, like looking back, I just like, there's certain times like I don't know how I got through that, or I don't know how I got through this, like again, like through the open without like passing out. I mean, every weight started to feel too heavy. I remember like picking up, like 20-pound dumbbells some days. Like, I can't do this.
So that actually, I look at CrossFit almost, and that is something that I think a lot of us do here, is we get almost like instantaneous feedback on our physical condition from a workout, right? So you go in and you do a metabolic conditioning workout, and I've come in days where I've just like, I do not, man, something, I am off today and I'm slow. And then, a day later, you realize, oh crap, I'm sick. I got a cold. Well, no wonder I didn't feel well. So you get that instantaneous feedback from exercise that I think, is valuable. And for you, it sounds like you had it through the open where like, oh shit.
Yeah. And like, honestly, I mean, when I was at NC Fit too, it was like, I was going through this and telling a few of the coaches there and a couple of my friends. And I remember we had an in-house throwdown. It was like last November, and I was on a team, and I think I had like purged the night before. And I was it was like a max clean or something, and I could barely do, like 85, which like my Olympic lifting isn't heavy. That's always been my weakest, but that was something that used to be like just fine. And I remember standing there, like trying to lift the bar. I was like, oh my God, Lisa, like, what did you do? And I was embarrassed because, but I like obviously wasn't going to say anything to my team, and like made it through that, all the workouts there. Like my body started to come alive a little bit, but I was having more of these days, like I was just feeling weak all the time, and I knew it. And I think the difference now is like, if I'm feeling tired, like it just takes me longer to warm up, and I'll either feel really good during the workout, or I'll know like, okay, it's time to scale it back. But yeah, there's just a lot of times where it's like in the back of my mind, it's like, I'm here, but this, like, I know I shouldn't really be doing this, or my body's not okay right now.
So the new program you're in, you're the Kaiser program. I want to talk about that for a minute, if that's all right.
Yeah.
One of the things that Lisa told me it revealed to me is that they didn't want her to exercise. They recommended that she not exercise because of its impact on her physical self, and then how it's interrelated with her eating disorder. And I don't know if I gave her great advice, but I felt like the community at Diablo and the coaches at Diablo would be a very positive source for her through this process, and that the act of going through our workouts would be beneficial for her in this process, not really, admittedly, not knowing and understanding a lot. And she decided to keep going and doing it. And I will say is that in the last, I think 3 months, I've, especially the last 2 months, really noticed the differences in your appearance. We see it in your face right away, that clearly you're in a better place, and you're clearly gaining some weight back. And she's been able to maintain and CrossFit throughout the process. But tell just how often do you meet with everyone, and what's their recommendation and strategy for helping you overcome your disorder?
So while I was in the so it's their outpatient intensive program, and during that time, it was Mondays were in person, and go from the morning to afternoon, where you like weights and vitals, group therapy, have a morning snack, process, go out to a meal, which was always a challenge meal. You had like a certain, you had to finish, and then process more, come home the afternoon, and then usually come here after that. And you have a therapist, a dietitian, a doctor, there's nurses. And then it was 2 days of group lunches over Zoom and then processing after. And your appointments were scattered throughout the week, meeting. Either I would meet in person with the dietitian when I was there that Monday or another day. And then Fridays, there was like an optional meal support group, which sometimes I did, sometimes I didn't. And then weekends, you're on your own. Now it's like 2 appointments a week and then a group. The group was optional, but I kept going with that. And there's other programs that offer like meal support if you want to do that. They have an app that we all log our meals in. And so then it was a little more intensive, when I was in that program, and now it's what's outpatient. So my dietitian and I meet once a week, my therapist and I meet once a week and have a meal together usually. And then we go over, it's called Recovery Record, which, I recommend for anybody that wants, because it's a way to stay accountable too.
Yeah.
But at the time I'm on a meal plan. It's not quite as intensive as it was when I was in the inpatient or the intensive outpatient program. And that one has, like a certain amount of calories that they recommend. Which they don't like really share with you. But like to give a little perspective, like there was a time when I was probably on the highest and was also needing to drink supplements because like I, for the first month, like was not gaining. And I know because I was coming here and wasn't following the plan 100%. But then it was like, okay, we got to get to a point where like I switched my mindset of you got to eat more because we don't want to be going backwards. So you can still work out as long as you're gaining some weight. I don't know exactly how much I'm eating, but I'm just kind of at this point of like following the plan as close as I can. The difference with it as well is like trying to take the fear off of certain foods, like the challenge foods, where like, yeah, if you're following CrossFit without an eating disorder, you're probably not going to go out for pizza. You're probably not going to.
That's right.
But this is of like, let's take away the stigma and take away the fear. So if that does come up, it's not like, there's not so much fear behind it.
Yeah.
Which is, one little step at a time.
Yeah. And I, honestly, I think it's really interesting because when you read the 100 Words of Fitness, eat meat, vegetables, nuts, seeds, berries, some fruit.
Little starch, no sugar.
Yeah. And little starch, is it little starch, no sugar?
Little starch.
Yeah.
No sugar.
Little starch, no sugar. You look at that, and that is probably not a great recipe for someone with an eating disorder, right? In terms of maybe helping support the stigmas that you or others might have about certain foods, right? Creating this, oh shit, I shouldn't be eating that, and it's an interesting challenge because we promote it and talk about it. We're even doing a no sugar challenge this month in the interest of steering people away from highly processed, calorie dense foods into more nutrient dense foods and in order to achieve better performance, but also better body composition. But some of those things when someone is obsessive about them, can create a serious issue.
Right. And I mean, especially like the no sugar thing. But also, I mean, just today, there's so much misinformation. And I think what's really difficult, I mean, even when I had first started with my eating disorders, like Atkins was really big at the time.
Right.
Like, no sugar, no fat, no.
I did Atkins years ago.
I mean, I'm sorry, but like
and it was really hard.
Fat-free, sugar-free, all this. And it's really bad for your stomach too. That's the other part of it. But now it's like everybody's making stuff with cottage cheese or like low carb keto, and there's so much noise. So being able to like shut that out and like, okay, right now I just need to focus on like what's going to fuel me that. Yeah. Cause I still do tend to gravitate towards, I would say like whole foods more like maybe, I don't know. There's like, I mean, I've also been gluten-free since since 2010, like gluten intolerant. So that's just the way I typically eat, but being able to take the stigma off of like the food labels, like, okay, today my body is telling me that it's craving like XYZ. I need to be able to have that without the fear. I've never really prescribed to like the low fruit thing. Like people who
Right.
like fruit has sugar. It's like, it's fruit. You're fine.
Right.
Yeah,
that's
but-
not the problem.
Right.
The difference is when it's a processed fruit, like fruit juice.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But
Right.
then even then, like in a program, they're going to try and like, you're
That's
going
right.
to drink juice. You're going to
Yeah.
have French fries. You're going to have, like go to certain restaurants.
Is
And
is that goal to get as many calories in you as possible, or is that goal or is it both? Maybe to help remove the stigma that is creating a.
it's really to remove the stigma. It's like,
Okay.
yeah, they want you to eat, like you need your calories, but this is like, it's called the challenge for a reason.
Right.
That it's like, you're going to, I mean, we went to, I think we went to Five Guys, and I remember there was one day in particular where we went and had pizza at Pizza My Heart, and they had a gluten-free pizza, and I had to eat a certain amount, and I didn't feel it until like a few hours later. And then I remember coming here, and it happened to be like Max clean and jerk day or something.
Oh, shit.
And I was so tired. But I like got my strongest
Yeah.
jerk, and it's like, okay, well, there you go. But it took me like a day to feel better,
Yeah.
Wow.
because it just, my body didn't know what to do.
Yes.
But again, it was like, you can go have pizza and it's not a demonized food. Like that's the whole point of it, is to take away this fear
Yeah.
that nothing is off the cards, that like, okay, you can have cookies, you can have the things that we like label as bad. Because we're not going to do that anymore. We're not going to label food as good or bad. You're not good or bad. You're just trying to fuel your body. And I like it. I mean, it is a struggle, because I do find myself still kind of defaulting to certain things,
Mhm.
and I become a creature of habit, because it's comfortable and it's safe. But like for me, eating earlier and eating frequently was such a huge change. And like now there's no excuse, which is why I bring stuff with me here. Cause like, if I don't do it while I'm here, it's easier to go home and like offset.
Mhm.
Yeah. I know. I'll see Lisa. She sits up in the front room and she prepares her food. And if it's, she has Greek yogurt with a little bit of protein, right?
Yeah.
And a
so, like,
banana.
me, my oatmeal.
Yeah, and her oatmeal. And you know what's interesting is that was kind of my first window into that eating was challenging for how, like, okay, so when Yvonne makes meal prep meals,
Yep.
and she brings them, and I literally like I throw the top off, throw it in the microwave. Even if it's cold, I don't even really think, it's not hot, screw it. And it's and I'll eat it. And I don't think about it. Lisa, the difference is, right? So she's got a Greek yogurt and a protein powder, maybe some bananas or something.
Always banana
And
peanut
she's
butter.
very methodical. I watch her. She's very methodical. She takes her time, and it takes her a while to make her food. And it's almost like, I feel like it's like for you, you're building up this kind of anticipation. Okay, I'm going to make this happen. Okay, well, here we are. Okay, now I'm going to eat it. And it's
It's a process now.
yeah, it's a process. And I appreciate seeing it, because it gives me kind of a taste. Okay, wow. Like I've never thought, because I grew up in a family of 4 boys, and it was just like, oh, eat what you can when you can, and devour it down, and not having any kind of understanding of that process. It made me like, wow, okay.
To be honest, like there's times I feel a little bit crazy. It's like I'm sitting there with like, it's always got to be oatmeal, but that's just become it's become the thing. And I look forward to it now.
Yeah,
And
good.
then I know like a couple hours
That makes
later,
me
I'm going to
happy.
eat again. And then I'm going to eat again. And
Yeah.
it doesn't, the difference is, and my therapist has actually been very honest. It's like, Lisa, I think you want to be further along than you really are. Like this takes months, years to get over, and your body's going to take a really long time to feel better and to have. Right now, it's like you can't really operate on hunger fullness cues.
Yeah.
You kind of just have to eat. And they call it mechanical eating, where it's I don't really want to, I don't feel hungry, but I need to. And the more I do that, the better I'll start to feel.
Fake it till you make it, I guess. Kinda.
That's I mean, you had mentioned like as far as like athletes, as far as that's a huge thing, is like having to force feed yourself in order to fuel for performance. I mean, you'll see back in the day when Sandra was here, or even myself back in the day, was loading up the microwave, heating it
Yeah.
up. Don't want to eat this right now,
No,
but
she'd be
I gotta
sitting
train
yeah, I
later.
do. That's funny you say that because I do remember Sandra, same thing.
Yeah,
Like
it's
laborious,
kind of a grind, yeah.
laboriously, sitting over food and having to eat.
Well, and even so, and like that, and it's like, no, I'm not a games athlete. Like, I come here and I walk and that's it. But I then don't use that as an excuse to skip or to say like,
Yes.
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
you're not going to feel yourself now because you haven't really like worked out that hard. Or even like some
Mhm.
days in here, it's more of a move your body workout. It's like, I'm still going to have this, or I'm like, incidentally today, like I have to rush home after class today. So you won't see me with my little corner, but it's like, that's become a comfort
Yeah.
for me. It's like, I like that I'm staying here longer, having whatever it is that I have. And the fact that it took me such a long time to work up to that
Mhm.
and to eat in front of people too. Cause there was like a level of shame, which is really common with eating disorders as well.
Interesting.
Eating a lot by yourself
Yeah.
because you don't want to do it around other people.
Just don't want to feel like there's judgment
It's
or
judgment.
anything.
It's like,
Yeah.
and the fact is like, nobody really cares. And if anybody says anything, like that's their issue.
Yeah.
It's not yours.
That's right. Especially, and that's one really cool thing about CrossFit and the
Mhm.
CrossFit community
Yeah.
is like, I don't know, we really are family in a lot of respects. Like, okay, yeah, all right. So, someone's eating something, okay, someone can eat something, right? Someone's not eating something, someone's not, I mean, we just, it's really interesting. I think the people that we have 4 showers in the shower area, and they each has its own door. And literally, if we told people, hey, it doesn't matter, I think people would walk around naked in there, men and women, in that hallway, because we all know each other so well. Like, oh, I forgot my towel. Okay, come on. No, we don't do that. But what I'm saying is that it's a really kind of cool thing about
Open.
CrossFit and bonding together, over a very intense workout. We're revealing ourselves, by the way, in the workout, who we are. Like, you can't hide.
You're being vulnerable, essentially.
Yeah, that's right. Well said. That's right. You're being vulnerable, and it's one of the it is one of the reasons why it was hopeful that you would stay with us during that process.
Well, and now feeling it too, of like, just so getting my strength back too is like something that keeps me going, because they call it too, like your eating disorder brain will take over a lot. And like the way I see myself and my body, like my self-perception is, I understand, still very off, but I'll start to want to have like my sick body again. Like, oh, maybe I could lose a little bit of weight, and getting really uncomfortable. And it's like, oh, but I feel so strong now.
Yeah.
And,
It's like you don't want to see those numbers dip.
Right. And I'm still not like, so I stopped weighing myself as well, which was a huge thing. I put the scale away. And so I only get weighed when I go in.
Yeah.
And I'm not what they call like restored. So the other part too is that you have to there's a set point, and the medical team puts that out. And like, this is probably going to feel like more than you're comfortable with, or more than you think you should gain. And that's where I have to fight the eating disorder brain. It's like, I think we're good. I think we can stop now.
Yeah.
But was it the workout we had one this week with, the 21-15-9 snatches and burpees
after the hang snatch.
Being able to do like the 35-pound dumbbell again. Cause for a period, like I couldn't do it. I could not lift it over my head. Wow. I was so weak. And then now like going unbroken, like,
it's awesome.
Oh, I could do this again.
Yeah.
And
good.
Or like having shape in my legs again. I played soccer growing up as well. So I call them like swole legs now. Like I just feel like they kind of explode sometimes.
Awesome.
It's like, I have a butt and I have muscle. And this is okay. Remember that when the brain is saying like, you can go back again.
Yeah.
Like you can go back to that point.
It's a really cool feeling. It's one of the feelings that we try to get people hooked on that join us as quick as possible. I just did a couple of startup appointments yesterday with new members, and all I was thinking is, man, and I told the one guy who was on his first one, I go, look, dude, 3 months from now, you're gonna go sit in the car and you're gonna feel like, ooh, man, I feel really tight. I feel taut, and then you're gonna notice your t-shirts are fitting differently, and there's a little bit of a dopamine rush with that. Like you get that, and you're like, ooh, oh yeah. And then you have, like you said, like we're able to do the 35-pound dumbbell snatches unbroken, which is impressive, by the way, in that workout. And you're like, and you get done with that, and you're like, oh shit, like that's substantial, and it's addictive, and that's what we want, we want our members to feel, because it's very powerful. Is this a lifelong disease for you?
Yeah, unfortunately, yes, because admittedly, there's time, like I'm not recovered. Like I'm not going to walk in here and be like, everything's great. Like certain meals are a struggle, or figuring out what to make and not default to, like, afterwards I'll be like, this was a little bit restrictive. Like this was not like as recovery focused. Yeah, it's every day. Some days are better than others. I think I'll get to a point where I'm not as involved. It's more of a whisper. But what I am dealing with are a lot of like the medical implications of it. I do have osteopenia. I am.
Does that reverse with weightlifting?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's not severe right now. So I can like continue, like I'll keep getting checked. My other, electrolytes are much better. Like I had gotten to a point where I was at like the border of liver damage. I had really elevated liver enzymes, and that has reversed. There was like one that we need to retest again. And then the other part of it too is estrogen or estradiol. And for years actually I've been like considered postmenopausal.
Fascinating.
And we're not like, that often was like, oh, if you get to a certain weight, that can return. But I think it could at this point, we're not sure if like that's even going to ever repair.
So does that mean, do you have a period?
No, I haven't in years. And again, I'm almost 40. So at this point, it's like, will I get one back? Yeah. So
it's almost accelerated aging.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, other parts have gotten better. Like, one thing is, and people will comment too, is like, you have a glow to you, like my skin and hair grows, nails, like that was just like everything gets really dull.
Yeah, that was what, seriously, that's what we noticed. I mean, it literally was like a glow.
Yeah. And I don't think I noticed it at first as much. And now I'm like, oh yeah, I do. Like, I look better.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, to answer your question, there's days where I'm like, okay, I feel really strong. I feel great. I'm not thinking about my body as much. And others where I'll get into these like anxious spirals of like body checking and like, I don't like this. It's like, these didn't used to be as like fitting. And, or I'll catch a like image of myself when I like was thinner, like, oh, I wonder what that'll feel like again. And then I have to stop myself. It's like, you felt like shit. Just remember that. Like, you felt terrible. So there's no like ideal weight. There's no like, I'm going to stop at this point. It's like, let's just go take it day by day.
Yeah. So you have to fall in love with the process.
Right.
And in the process, it's about the process. It's not about the destination.
And accepting
it's the journey.
Yeah, it's the journey.
It sounds like you've kind of been using a lot of like your strength aspect as far as like how you're feeling, how you're moving weights.
Right.
As one of like those indicators as far as progress. It's at the beginning, you had mentioned that the program didn't want you to work out at all.
Yeah. I mean, they recommend that for everybody.
They didn't recommend it, but did you disclose that you are still continuing to come? Is that something that was kind of like open and out there that you were still training?
Not really. No, okay. I mean, I talked about walking. Okay. I mean, it was really like, you should not be walking. Like they didn't want me doing anything. And it's like, that's not going to happen. But I then would disclose like, yeah, I'm lifting weights, but I didn't talk about CrossFit. Okay. It's like, I'm just not gonna like, this is, so sorry.
I was just curious. The only reason why I ask, is I was curious, like is that something that they're measuring as far as like, like if this is one of those things that mentally is helping you, make progress, like, are they trying to lean into that or encourage the strength stuff?
Yeah. The mental health side of it.
Yeah. Right. Like how like, are they tying those two together in some way?
Yeah. Usually what ends up happening is people will then be on like a certain recommended amount or certain exercise amount, that, you're
based off their
program.
Feeling.
Yeah. And so I think like, that's where it's been more of this like deal with myself. It's like if you can gain and keep going, then, we can continue doing that. I think part of it is like, we have to be able to measure how much nutrition you need. Like if you're on a gaining program, like if somebody's maintaining, it's like, okay, now we can start seeing
Got it.
the exercise. But yeah, I mean, and I was honest with them too. It's like, listen, this is something for my mental stability that I need. And I said, like, they know what's going on with me at the gym as well. So then when it was like still recommended not to, it's like, okay, well, I'm just going to go. And as long as people there are holding me accountable, I think I'll be okay. And that's what I've been able to do. But like, admittedly, the first month I was like, nothing, like progress was not happening. I even remember doing Murph too. Like I was so skinny during Murph. Oh my God.
Admittedly, so I was pulling up pictures for this podcast.
Yeah.
And your Murph pictures came up in my folio of pictures. And I looked at like, wow, you were lean during Murph.
Really underweight.
Yeah.
And I remembered like, again, it was like I tapped into this energy level at some point, but looking back on that, it's like, oh gosh, girl, like, not good. But
your humility is awesome. And I think that's probably the best. I don't know. I think, I don't know a lot about recovery from something like this, but I think humility would be a big part of it. I imagine
it is. And then even like bringing that with like 2 workouts, I'm totally fine like needing to scale now. Yesterday good. I didn't feel good. Like my body was tired. It was like, okay, well, we're gonna,
It's that 35-pound dumbbell.
I know the day before. But it, and it's okay. And whereas like there's a period where it's like, no, you have to, like, you just have to go. Like, no, I'm just happy to be here and know that I'm doing something. So if I get, because oftentimes like I won't really wake up until the workout actually starts. Like, oh, now I feel good. And other times like we don't, but I'm not going to stop. Like I'll
sounds
scale
like
it down.
Sounds like a master's athlete, to be honest.
I am. I very much am.
That is so true. It sounds like, 32nd round in. Oh, okay, there it is.
Now I'm warm.
I know I'm warm. I can do this.
Oh yeah, I mean the warm. I love that we take a while to warm up. Sometimes I'm like, I need this.
Yeah.
As to everybody else.
What about I know that there's going to be people in this community and then beyond that listen to this podcast over the next week or 2 weeks or so, that will want to ask you questions or may relate to you, that probably haven't had any conversations with anyone. Are you open to those types of conversations? Are you okay with people reaching out and talking to you about it?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I think that's part of why I wanted to come on here too. Is like, I know that there's people that can relate, and often they don't reach out because you feel really alone in it. Like you're not alone. I mean, eating disorders are like the most deadly of mental health diseases. And also because they're so hard to treat and to get treatment. A lot of insurance companies won't cover.
You posted something on your Instagram the other day. It said that eating disorders, people with eating disorders are like 18 times more likely to die of suicide than
correct
the average person.
Yeah, it's either suicide or cardiac arrest will end up is what often kills people with eating disorders.
So Lisa's here in the middle of the day, and if you want to reach her, you can leave a message if you want to reach her directly, you can leave a message at our front desk and we'll relay that to her. And I'm sure, or you can reach out to her on Instagram too, DM her on Instagram and talk to her. She's, in my experience, you're an amazing person to talk to and easy to talk to. And so approachable. I mean, I literally, when you said, no, you can talk to me, you can tell me, ask me. I was like, okay, yeah, does she really mean that? But yeah, she really means that. And we've had some really good discussions that I've learned a lot from. So it's been helpful for me. So thank you.
Yeah. And thank you. And I remember like when I first started making progress and you said something, it was like, Craig, this is such a mind fuck. Like, I know that I'm doing better, but my mind is like, it's going crazy. Like, is this good? Should you stop? And like, no, like, Lisa, just take the compliment. Like,
lean into it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good. That's me. That's the 61-year-old man. So yeah, that's good. Well, this has been super informative.
I'm glad. Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I just, I'm like sweating so much in here
Yeah,
too. It's
I
like-
know. I know.
Podcasts are nerve-wracking.
I know they
Yeah.
are with the lighting and everything else. I
Yeah.
turned this. I went and turned on the air conditioning too. But it is because you were out there, and this is live. People are hearing this right now. We don't cut this up. And so thank you for being on. It's been awesome.
Oh, well, thank you. I'm like really happy to have this opportunity. I was
Yeah.
looking forward to it. Because like I said, too, when you were honest with me, it's like, thank you for saying something. Because I just felt like in a way I was saved.
Mhm.
Because I'd been saying to people here too, it's like, I need to eat better. And like, okay, this actually put me on the spot almost. Like,
Mhm.
you're going to do it and you are doing it. And I'm just really grateful to everybody here. 'Cause it's been an awesome community.
Yeah, we're blessed. We are blessed with an amazing community.
Really great.
So we'll follow up though. I want to do a follow-up session to this.
Yeah,
Maybe in
that'd be
like
great.
3 months, like check in and then see how it's going and get your feedback and maybe share more thoughts.
Absolutely.
All
More
right.
than happy to. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Thanks guys for listening.
Till next time.